All right, we're at a special time in the season, so I wanted to bring on a very special guest, one of my absolute favorites, the great Jerry Allen. Jerry,
Ooh.
good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Zach. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, it's Christmas time. We're at a very, this a special time of the season. The stage is officially set, and it feels like you couldn't script anything better than this. I mean, it's the rematch that we've been waiting for all season long since October. Oregon versus Ohio State, New Year's Day, the granddaddy of them all. The only thing that feels off is that this isn't for a national championship. Like, I think that's the only thing that I would write differently. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, you can go back and listen to people, complain about the bracket that Oregon got and how everything laid out. But I like what Dan Lanning said. It's, you got to play the best teams to win the national championship, whether you play them early or play them late. Doesn't make a difference. Just play a game. So I, I've heard that the committee will readjust next year. There are probably a lot of things they're going to do to try to fix it and get it perfect. But I don't care what side you're on. If you fix it, then the people who wanted you to fix it, they go, "Whoa, okay, you got it right." And then the other half's going to go, well, what'd you mess with it for? It was fine. So you
Yeah.
can't.
Well, what I think about this, I mean, like you said, to be the best, you have to beat the best. I mean, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to play a good team to win the championship no matter what. I'm kind of of the opinion that hey, it's kind of good for Oregon to get them now when you have this 3 week rest advantage. And Ohio State just played a high intensity game this past week. Yes, they're hot, they've got momentum, they're feeling good. Oregon's just kind of been doing their own thing, kind of laying in the cut right now, resting and getting prepared for this game. I like that position that they're in. If you're going to get Ohio State, I'd rather do it now when you are fully healthy.
Yeah, not only fully physically healthy, but mentally healthy too. I mean, you've had time to unwind and let all that long season, that the pressure of all every game, every week, pressure, week. Then you get to relax a little bit, and school's out of the way,
Mhm.
and you can focus on yourself for 10 days, maybe a couple of weeks, and really hone your skills. And then you get preparation for whoever you're going to play, which in this case is Ohio State. It's a best case scenario for Oregon to be in that position.
Do you worry about rust at all? I had Jeff Boss on the podcast last week and I just asked him, I said, hey, have you ever had 3 weeks in the middle of your season where you didn't play and you had to, kind of sit back and wait? And he said, no, it's never happened, but he's, taking the extra precautions, as is the whole team, to make sure that they're still physically fit and in the best shape. But, fans, myself, media members, we say, hey, sometimes you see after a long break, they have to knock off a little bit of rust. I'm just curious, is that something you're concerned about at all?
Yeah, not really, because I think Dan Lanning and his staff, the staff, the strength and conditioning nutritionist, everybody involved, understands what we're talking about. That you can't take time off, that you can't
Mhm.
get rusty. So they practiced. They practiced hard. They took a few days off. They got some time off now for the Christmas break, and then they'll come back and they'll go hard again. So I'm not sure they took that much time off. They've got a routine that they do for lifting, even when they don't go to practice. They keep that daily routine going to meetings and the film work. So it's not like they got 2 weeks vacation and now they got to come back to work.
I mean, these players have said all along that their practices are much harder than the games. So I'm sure that they've been hitting hard in practice and getting after it. I'm sure they're
Oh yeah,
tired. They're probably
yeah,
they're looking forward to a game to try and get a break from the practices they've had. 2 weeks of practice, that sounds like a lot.
yeah. I mean, you do want to hit somebody else. I know in fall camp we asked coaches and the guys. You've had like fall camp, like 4 weeks, and now weeks preparation for a game. I mean, what are you thinking? And almost every time it's like, yeah, we want to hit somebody else. We want to play somebody else, because you do get hit, tired of going against a team that, and your defense knows what your offense is doing day in and day out, and the other way around. Of course, Oregon's going to try to get Ohio State's and break it down so that they know that they're doing too, and vice versa. But yeah, you want to hit somebody else. I think Dan Lanning has always said, and his players have said, practices are harder than games, and you want that to be like that. Now, the NFL is not like that. The NFL doesn't make practice harder than games, but college still does. I think
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
I think so too. Let's talk about Ohio State and this Ohio State Tennessee game. What were your thoughts? I mean, I'm assuming you watched that game on Saturday night. What were your thoughts just kind of watching that game and watching that play out? I mean, Ohio State looked really good. It looked good. I don't know if Tennessee looked bad or Ohio State looked great or if it was kind of a mixture of the two, but what were your general takeaways from that?
I thought I was not surprised that Ohio State did what they did. I thought First of all, they love their coach, and they got challenged. The fans challenged them. The media challenged them. So that's motivation. And team leadership for Ohio State, I think is really, really good. They got a great quarterback. So, and running backs and tremendous receivers. So I thought they were going to come out with a chip on their shoulder and at home, and that's what they did. And then Zach, I really didn't think that Tennessee was the same caliber of team, talent wise, or almost anything about them as Ohio State. And then I went back and looked at Tennessee's roster. I mean, their schedule. And you see, they really didn't. They didn't play anybody like the Big Ten schedule or even the SEC schedule. So I was not shocked. And once Ohio State got to go in that home crowd, I mean, it was like, whoa. After the first quarter, it was over. And I knew it was
Oh
over.
yeah. So you're saying that a team from the SEC that didn't play anyone maybe shouldn't have belonged in the playoff? Oh, you're getting into some narratives here, Jerry, that I think nationwide would would strike up some conversations.
Yeah, I know. But when you look at some of the non-conference games that the SEC teams played, it's easy to go, well, that's why I say that. I mean, look who they
Absolutely.
lost to, who they played. So, and it's always hard to compare schedules and
Yeah.
teams and all. But I still think when you look at the SEC, they didn't have. Georgia came back strong. They recovered and they're good. But I'm not sure that they had anybody else that was one of the top four teams in the nation or five teams. But to me, anybody in the top 12 is good enough to get on a run. So the SEC, yeah, they deserve to be there. They should be there. They're still one of the premier conferences in the nation, no doubt.
Yeah, that's a whole rabbit hole that we could go down. We're
Oh
not
yeah,
we're not going to do that today. Don't worry.
no,
When we talk about Ohio State, though, I'm kind of with you. I thought they were either gonna. I thought there was two ways it was gonna play out on Saturday. They were either gonna come out like they did with a chip on their shoulder and just show how elite of a team they are, or I thought there was a possibility that they could roll over and we could see that kind of that Michigan version of Ohio State where they didn't really know what they wanted to do. They heard all the outside noise with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and all the nonsense going on outside of the program. I was impressed with what I saw because they did, it was very apparent that over the past couple of weeks they hunkered down and focused on just themselves, and they came out swinging after that. So they showed me a lot. I expected to see a good version of Ohio State. I don't know that I expected to see them look this good against Tennessee. And again, I don't know if I don't know Tennessee well enough to say, hey, is this really an elite performance, or is Tennessee kind of someone that I think what would Oregon have done in that situation if they played Tennessee? I think it probably would have looked pretty similar, if I'm being honest.
yeah. I thought Ohio State played by far their best complete game of the year, and I thought it started with Will Howard. Will Howard had something to answer for in that Michigan game. He didn't play to the caliber that he is. I mean, he made some mistakes. He didn't play the way he wanted to, and he took he took it's responsibility for that. He said that
Mhm.
after that Michigan game. So I thought that game needed to start well for Will Howard, and I thought if
Mhm.
it did, then the rest of the team would be there. They'd make the plays, and it did. Will Howard played exceptionally well in that football game, and I thought he was the key. And then Ohio State had the trenches. Tennessee just could not match them in the trenches.
Well, and I was looking at some stuff on Twitter from college football analysts that I respect, and they're saying that what Tennessee's defense was doing is nothing like what Michigan's defense did against Ohio State, where Michigan kind of gave them the game plan for how to stop Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and try and force them to run the ball to where you have a really strong defensive line. And Tennessee just didn't really do that. They went a lot of man coverage on the outside. They didn't bracket Jeremiah Smith to double team him. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if Oregon saw that. I'm positive. I shouldn't say I'm curious. I'm positive Dan Lanning saw this and they said, hey, we know how to defend these guys. We did it a couple months back.
Yeah, I think Tennessee, to their credit, they think they have really good athletes, which they do,
Mm-hmm.
and they looked at that Michigan game, and they knew that Ohio State looked at that Michigan game too. So Ohio State was going to make the corrections or the adjustments against that game against Michigan. And I think Tennessee, it's a chess match. Okay,
Yeah.
they're going to move the rook, they're going to move the bishop. What are they going to move here? So we're going to anticipate that they're going to be ready for us to do what Michigan did, and Tennessee didn't do that. They tried to put together a different defense and maybe catch Ohio State not ready for that. I think, and it didn't work. Ohio State was on track. I mean, they just were ready for that game in every sense, every way.
Let's look forward. We had press conferences with both Ryan Day and Dan Lanning earlier this morning. Day talked about how neither of these teams are the same this time around. A lot of the players are the same, but both teams have evolved as they're supposed to throughout the year. It feels notable that the Ducks did not have Jordan Birch in that first
Yeah.
meeting against Ohio State, arguably their best defensive player. Dan Lanning came on and said that God doesn't make many people who look like Jordan Birch, and he's definitely not wrong.
Oh.
How big of an impact do you think that is? How much confidence do you think that should give Oregon's defense that they have number one this time around?
Yeah, I think it's huge because not just what he does, it's how good he makes the guys around him. He makes the linebackers better. He makes the edge rusher. He makes everybody better because the defense has got to probably make sure that there's at least two, if not three guys aware of where he is and what he might be doing. So he makes that whole team better, I think. But I think Oregon's entire team is so much different than they were in that first 4 games. They were still Zach, going through that offensive line adjustments, that trying to get it right, trying to get the communication, trying to get the chemistry. And when they finally got it, 5, 6 games in, they were a different team than they were the first 2 or 3 games. So I think Oregon is much better. I think Ohio State was really good. And then I don't know what happened in that Michigan game. I have no answer for that.
Yeah.
It's why they play the games. It's kids, and it's a rivalry. My
Mhm.
gosh, it's a rivalry. How many times did Oregon go up to Oregon State and the Beavers come down Autzen Stadium as big underdogs and win the game? I mean,
Yeah.
so it happens. But I think Ohio State is the real deal. I think, and some people have said they think this is the national championship game. I wouldn't disagree. I think these are two best teams. But I'll tell you what, Oregon battled Penn State, and they're pretty good. So
Yeah.
whoever gets to the national championship game is going to earn it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. On this side of the bracket, for sure, they are
No
gonna.
doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love
Yeah.
about this 12-team playoff. It really leaves no doubt with, all. If you didn't get into the 12-team playoff, you probably didn't deserve to play for the championship. And if you win the championship, you definitely earned it. Um, I want to talk about fan impact in this game. I asked Dan Lanning, I think it was a week ago when we talked, that when you get to neutral site games, those don't generally favor West Coast teams or specifically teams in the Pacific Northwest because they're usually down in Texas or Atlanta or
Yeah.
somewhere like that. This is on the Rose Bowl. We get this in Pasadena. Oregon fans travel I think 2,000 miles down south for this game. When I forget what the number is. I think I'm getting that wrong, but anyway, Ohio State fans have to travel a long way, and they have a week to prepare for this trip. While Oregon fans have known about this trip for the past 3 weeks, and they've been able to get their tickets, book their flights, get their hotels. I think there's going to be a good amount of Oregon fans compared to Ohio State fans. What do you think? How big of an impact do you think that'll have?
I think, well, for one thing, I think Oregon had that 3 weeks to delve in and get tickets. They sold out their allotment right away, so the secondary ticket market became alive. And I'm sure Oregon fans learned this year if there's a big game coming up, Ohio State, Alabama, those teams, those fan bases know how to look ahead and get tickets and where to go to get them. Oregon fans have learned that now. So and LA, LA is a overnight stay, or a lot of people will drive straight through. You can drive, and
Oh, yeah.
particularly the fan base in Northern California or around the Los Angeles area are going to drive. I think Oregon's going to have a huge fan base. Ohio State will travel well too. There's no doubt. But I remember the Rose Bowls and seeing Oregon at one end or Wisconsin or Ohio State at the other end, and the fans are pretty evenly split. I would not be surprised this time if Oregon had a few more fans than Ohio State.
I completely agree. And it feels like over the past couple of days since this announcement was made final that it was Ohio State, that the energy around it has just picked up twofold. I mean, I had several friends who were going when it was Oregon against Ohio State or Tennessee. I've had several more friends say, hey, we just got tickets now that it is Ohio State because this is the game everyone's been waiting for since October. I mean, like you said, this feels like the national championship. I mean, it feels like the game to be at in this round of the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I mean it's really funny because I get a ticket for my wife and I'm working the game, so we don't get two. I get one for her, and I put in for it, and that was it. And then about a week to 10 days later, I've got like 8 or 9 grandkids who are like all of a sudden, "Hey, Grandpa, can you get me tickets?" And I'm like, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, and I need to know that ahead of time, and we'd have had to buy them." So that's okay. We would have bought them. I said, "Well, you're a little late. There's
Yeah,
no way we're getting tickets."
sold out.
Yeah, yeah. So everybody's, I want to go to the grocery store. Somebody make a comment. I have a friend who lives down in Palm Springs, and he texted me, and said, "Hey, yeah, you have any connections?" So yeah, this is almost, it kind of reminds me of the game against Florida State in the Rose Bowl when Marcus
Mhm.
Mariota took them down. I still remember Tony Washington scooping up that ball and that touchdown. That's the kind of game this is to me. It's the game that leads to a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about. I just kind of want to do general takeaways from the first round of playoff games. We talked a little bit about the discourse earlier about blowouts and teams not deserving to be in or not. We don't need to get into that, but my biggest takeaway from the first round was that these on-campus playoff games were incredible. I mean, the energy, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. I love that. I think that's the best thing the playoff committee, not even the committee, but the people who decided this
Yeah.
did right with the playoff games. I think there should be more on-site playoff games, on-campus playoff games. I think they should be like the NFL. They go on campus until the Super Bowl, until the national championship. Then you go neutral site somewhere for that. What was your biggest takeaway from the first round of playoff games?
Oh, the excitement that the nation got caught up in on those games. I mean, Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame. It was a championship winner out atmosphere, and the
Mhm.
fans bought into it. And I think the fans across the nation did too. I love that aspect. I am really happy that they had the on-site games, but still were able to keep the traditional bowl games intact. Okay,
Yeah.
so how do you have more on-campus games in the early rounds, but still keep the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl? How do you keep those in there? And there'll be a way to do it. Maybe instead of start with the quarterfinals and the semis, they have two play-in. Yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I love the on-site. I mean, yeah, we're going to end up with an 18 game
Yeah.
season here before it's all said and done.
Yeah, we really will. All right, I've got one big ask for you here. So please feel free to take a second if you need time to think about this.
Okay.
What is your favorite Rose Bowl moment in your career?
Wow, it was. It wasn't even actually in the game.
Okay.
It was Georgie and I in 1995 were down in the parking area doing pregame shows. We had gone upstairs and we'd seen the Rose Bowl with Penn State and Oregon, but not many fans in. So we'd gone back downstairs and we're doing pregame stuff. And then we get about 10 or 15 minutes before we got to go on the air. So we hustle the elevator, get upstairs, come into the booth, getting stuff ready, and we're looking out. And our producer at the time wasn't Joey Mack. He said, "You guys are live." And I went to open and I couldn't talk. I was like, tears, the emotion. So I went,
Uh-huh.
"Georgie." And Georgie was, "I can't talk." Neither one of us could open without the emotion of where we were, the first look at the full stadium, all the Oregon fans, all the Penn State fans, and the moment it was the first time Oregon had been in the Rose Bowl. Well, I joked it wasn't that long, but I said since Noah brought the ark out, but it had been a long time. And so for us to walk out, hustling around doing stuff, and then look up and go, we couldn't do it. And I'll never forget that moment. There were some great plays in the games. I mentioned Tony Washington. That was a semi-playoff game, but that's the one. That's the first moment that comes to mind when I think of the Rose Bowl.
That's awesome. And I remember I went down. So I was at the Rose Bowl in 2012, 2011 season, but the one in 2012 against Wisconsin. And I've never covered a game there. I went down as a fan. Obviously, I was just still in high school, but
Yeah,
just a remarkable place. And I talked to Joey Harrington last week. It's one of those things you can't really describe it. It's one of those things you got to be there to really
you
know
have to
what
live
it's
it.
about. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a special
And
place.
it's they called it the granddaddy of them all. I mean, the other bowls, Sugar Fiesta, the Orange Bowl, all the Cotton Bowl, all have their mystique. But the Rose Bowl, for whatever reason, maybe it's because we're on the West Coast and it was a pack 8, 10, 12 game, that it seems to be the best. But whenever they broadcast it, I can remember Dick Enberg and all the long list of TV announcers, open it up as the granddaddy of them all, meaning this is the best bowl game in the nation. And to
Mhm.
me, it has and always will be.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, let's close with this. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction for the game because it feels like we still may be a little bit too far out for that. I still need to process the matchup a little bit more. But how are you feeling about this game? You think about this game, what's the feeling that you get in your stomach? Is it excitement? Is it anxiety? Is it nervousness? What are you feeling?
It's a little bit of all those. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
excited for it, right? I'm excited for it. And then I feel very confident in Oregon and their ability. And then I get nervous because I know how good Ohio State is.
Mhm.
So it's all of those. But the whole key to this game for me, in without picking a team or picking a score or anything, is that the team that doesn't beat themselves, the
Mhm.
team that plays their game of football. If Oregon plays Oregon football the way Dan Lanning wants him to play, I don't care who the opponent is. Doesn't make any difference. You play Oregon football, limit the mistakes, the miscues, penalties, the key situations, explosion plays. Just play Oregon football the way he's coached them to do all year, and they're going to be fine. I'd say the same thing about Ohio State. If they play like they did against Michigan, they're in trouble. They played the way they did against Tennessee. This can be a Donnybrook.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's when I think about it, I feel that same way. It's a lot of excitement. It's a little bit of
Yeah,
anxiety. And then, I
yeah,
mean, we've both been following this program for a long time. You obviously longer than I have, but part of me, there's still just like that Oregon fan inside me that thinks, why would they win this game? It's never happened before. I mean, yes, it's happened before, but this is
yeah.
not always a game they win. So that's a part of me that I'm trying to tamp down. It's a bad part of my brain, but I generally feel a lot of confidence and just a ton of excitement for this game. It's going to be a super fun one.
Yeah, there's a lot of fan in me. I can't hide it. You can't be
Mhm.
somewhere as long as I have, and you're a part of that too. And not have a heart for your team, and you
Mhm.
want them to win, so you're pulling for them. And we're homers, we're Oregon broadcasters, but we respect the other team, so we try not to be over the top. But
Mhm.
I want Oregon to win this game so bad. I told Dan Lanning when he got here a couple of years ago, in his office, I just looked at him and I said, you know what? I feel so good that you're here because you are going to win me my first national championship.
Yeah,
And I believe that.
I think, yeah, this could be the year. This really could be
Could
the
be.
year.
It could
Setting
be.
up
Could
pretty
be.
good for it. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you again to Jerry Allen for coming on. Always a pleasure to chop it up. Have a great holiday season with your family, Jerry, and I will see you down in Pasadena to celebrate the new year, huh?
I enjoy your holiday, and I can't wait to see you down there. All right, make sure we find each other upstairs, probably in the food line, and
Yeah,
get a little high five, a little
sounds
fist bump.
good.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks,
Jerry.
Zach.
Thanks, Jerry.